A good writer must also be a good reader. So, fellow writers, what have you been reading these days, and what lessons can you learn from it to apply to your writing? Happy Friday to you all. Sam here with another Friday video for you, talking about reading, writing, and how reviews, how they all connect together a little bit. Um, I do a book review roughly once a month. I'm reading about one fiction book a month. I'm slow. My progress is slow. It's slower than it used to be with a kid and a job and all that stuff. I do about one fiction book and one nonfiction book a month. Because at this time, um, I just started a Wheel of Time book, which will take me the whole month. So I'm not ready to review that one yet. I'm not terribly far into it. Oh, maybe I think I'm at like 100 pages in out of like 900. So it's something. Anyway, I also started doing comic book reviews in the last few months because I read a lot of comic books, and I'm like, hey, if that's the genre I'm writing in, or I'm writing a prose superhero story, but obviously you'll have similar audiences. I would expect to comic books, and so I'm like I want to talk about those and review those. So today, so my last few, if you want to go back and read them, and find them in the archives, you can. I did a review of some of the X-Men comics by Marvel, and one last month about it was partially to do with DC's latest stuff, but more about one of my favorite writers, Brian Michael Bendis, who was with Marvel for a long time and he transitioned to DC. Today's kind of a higher level overview of a lot of DC titles since the Rebirth era. If you're a comic book person, that might mean something to you. Um, DC does reboots every once in a while. Like I guess both companies kind of do, but their last relaunch, soft relaunch, was in 2016. It was called Rebirth, and or DC Rebirth, and yeah. Most people agree it was better, and I do it too. It was better than the last reboot, which is the New 52 in 2011. But yeah, what I'm gonna say today. How do I start this? Okay, I love both Marvel and DC, as you probably know. Even I'm wearing a Batman shirt today. I'm big Batman fan, big Superman fan, all that stuff. Um, I do probably, if I had to choose, I lean a little more toward Marvel, and I have my reasons, and I understand there's a lot of good and a lot of bad on both sides out of everything that's ever been published. Um, but I do think I think Marvel has more interesting characters and more interesting stories. So what I'm going to say today is going to be somewhat critical of DC. I mean, I'm not trying to bash them. I'm just trying to critique for us to learn from. Um, I love DC Comics as much as the next guy. Like I've been saying, I read the comics. I've been following most of the major characters. Like, I mean, I'm not caught up. I'm a few years behind, but like I started reading them again at the Rebirth era, and I've been following the major titles like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Justice League, everyone like that. Pretty much almost all their titles. I might have skipped a few that were minor characters who I wasn't too interested in, but I read most of them up through like probably 2020 now. Um, and so I know what I'm talking about when I talk about comics, and I think I've enjoyed the Rebirth comics, but there's a lot of some missed potential, and I'll tell you why I think that. It feels like people have said before, not just me, that Marvel has more down to earth characters, like Spider Man, X Men, who are maybe very realistic. I mean, in terms of personality and very human, and have their human weaknesses. DC has more iconic characters. Again, they've both published so many characters and so many titles that you can see both on both sides. It's not a complete one or the other, but in general trends like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, who are the big three, who are um, gods and billionaires and stuff like that, not your average everyday person who happen to get powers. And I think some of these iconic, larger than life characters who DC has are becoming a little stale, depending on who the writer is. Okay, that's my premise today, I guess. Some of these characters are becoming stale, and or they could be less stale if they would do different things, or if with different writers, perhaps. But just I don't feel like DC has given them a lot of creative opportunity to grow in the last little while. I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, so I talked about last week or last month some of the interesting things that Bendis has done with Superman. I've enjoyed them for the most part. I've enjoyed those comics. He he expanded, kind of further developed the character of John Kent, who's Superman's teenage son now, and he had Superman reveal his identity to the world. That was a big like a big deal. That I'm sure some other writer might undo it eventually. That happens in comics, but for now it's the way it is. So it's cool to see stories like that. He's developed the character interestingly, and I mean Superman is one who can be hard to develop because you know poor writers treat him as one dimensional, and then when you try to develop him, it's like how do you give him challenges and give him new, like I guess new things to explore when you don't want to take away from when he's invulnerable and also like morally invulnerable, like how do you give him challenges like that? So I think Bendis has done a good job with that. Batman titles for the last for the last good while. Scott Snyder has been one of the biggest Batman writers. I actually met Scott Snyder at a Comic Con one time. That was cool. And yeah, he wrote both the reboot and the New 52 and the ones in Rebirth for at least a good while. I know other writers have taken over for him since, like Tom King has been on it at some point. And yeah, and of course there's Batman. There's always like 3 or 4 different Batman titles running at once. You got Batman, you got Detective Comics, and you got a few others. So they have different writers. So I mean, it's not just one person, but and then a few other people. I love Batman, as I said, and I do think Scott Snyder has done some interesting things with him in the past little while. In the ones I read in the Rebirth era, there was an arc where you might have heard about it. Batman and Catwoman were supposed to get married. I always wonder what if Batman actually let himself be happy and settled down and stuff like that. And that would be an interesting development in his arc because it changes his character. And he almost did. Spoilers if you're ever going to read them. Catwoman walked out on him at the end, so they didn't get married. They were engaged for a while, and they did not get married. And so it was like basically that was another blow to Batman that he had to recover from, emotionally, psychologically, and such. And some other things happened. Like Bane took over Gotham City for a while and actually killed Alfred. I mean, again, I'm sure a writer can bring him back later, but as of where I'm reading right now, Alfred is dead, and so that also challenges Bruce. I mean, his mentor, his longtime mentor and friend is dead. What's he gonna do now? I think they've done some interesting things with Batman, but I've also seen some of these titles, more so in the New 52 era, be very. It just feels like it's repetitive. There's been an argument online. I've seen it. I'm not just about comics, but I've seen it in other contexts too. That Batman has become kind of a parody of himself, and I really think it depends on the writer. I'm not saying in general Batman is a parody of himself, but I see where they're coming from. Like, he's dark, he's moody, he's brooding, but he always wins because he's so resourceful. It's like he's invulnerable, kind of like a James Bond or something like that. I mean, he's a human, but he's like. He always wins. He always knows what to do. He's always gets himself out of tight scrapes. And I guess kind of the thing is, what are Batman's weaknesses, or like what new challenges can you throw at Batman that will keep him interesting. So I've read a lot of these Batman comics over the last like 10, 15 years, 10 or 12ish years. I didn't read the entire New 52 run, but I read good portions of it. And now I've read good portions of the Rebirth run too. I enjoy them. I'm entertaining. I'm still reading them, but I will say at times they made Batman feel like he's a static character. He's not gonna grow. I mean he's not gonna change. Like he's he's Batman. People like him because of who he is, because he's the iconic, dark, brooding, resourceful guy who always has it under control. But he's not gonna like change and become happy. I mean, even in universe, that was part of the argument. Joker kind of talked to Catwoman and convinced her like he can't be happy and be Batman at the same time, and that's why Catwoman was like, I have to leave you and not marry you because then you won't be Batman and you won't have your your crusade or whatever. And yeah, like obviously he's not going to change from that. I mean, sure, there are alternate realities, there are stuff like that. But he's not going to change from that core personality of dark and brooding and Batman. And so he's a static character, and he's pretty much always wins. What can you do to him to like change him or grow him or throw things at him like that? I mean, not literally throw things at him, but what more challenges can you throw at him? A creative writer can always think of something, and yeah, I've had a few ideas of my own, but at times I've felt like Batman has grown stale. I mean, yeah, you know, the comics are entertaining. I'm still reading the comics, but at times I feel like this isn't leading anywhere. This isn't building up to anything new or different. It's just the same. It's just kind of the same stuff over and over again. Um, I had a character in my first book, in my superhero story, who's I guess a little bit of a Batman. I mean, he's like the dark grim vigilante, who someone he loved died from crime, and now he is out for vengeance. I called him a cross between Batman and the Punisher, and I realized in the first book I was like, this character, he's not going to grow. He's static. He's not going to change. You know, if he develops outside of this, then that changes who he is. And I was like, I can't do anything else with this character. I cut him off at the end of book one. Spoilers. Sorry. Um, so I've seen I've dealt with characters like that where I'm like, well, they kind of they don't have anywhere else to go. So what do you do with them? So um, I'm just saying, Batman has potential to be still interesting. Obviously, they're still making comics, they're still making movies. People want more Batman, but there's been some stale stories in the Batman universe too. And I also feel the same for characters, the big name characters like Wonder Woman and the Flash. Again, I like them. I watched all 9 seasons of the Flash TV show, um, and yeah, but in the comics, I've read since the Rebirth era began in 2016. I've read their issues. Like, they've had probably over 100, I think over 100 issues each. I've read them all in order. I mean, not all at once. It's taken me a few years, but I've read that many issues, and I couldn't tell you now what the main plot points of those issues were, of those arcs. I mean, what I'm saying is, it feels like it feels like it's stories that are entertaining, but they're not really going anywhere. Stories that are a little bit cyclical. I wrote a blog post a few months ago about Wonder Woman, and kind of noticing this and suggesting, like, why does she have these stories that like don't build up to anything like Superman and Batman sometimes do? Like, how come they never did? These are some classic tropes in comic books. I mean, someone call them gimmicks, but I'm like, still, I don't think they've been done for Wonder Woman. Like how come they haven't had Wonder Woman's mother die, and Wonder Woman becomes the queen of Themyscira, and now she's like conflicted about how her duties as queen conflict with her duties in the Justice League. Like, how come that hasn't happened? Because that'd be an interesting arc for her. Or how come they haven't had Wonder Woman die, and Wonder Girl temporarily takes up the mantle, and Wonder Woman comes back later? Like how come they've never done that? Like, so when they've done it for nearly every other character. So, like, I'm just I like these characters, but I kind of feel like on paper, and it does depend on the writer for sure. On paper, I feel like some of them are a little flat, and some of them have lack personality. I mean, bringing them to screen always changes that a little bit. I watched all 9 seasons of the Flash TV show, and so Grant Gustin's Flash, I definitely feel like I know him as a character, but the Flash on paper, in these comics, I don't feel like that. It feels like it's just these stories are entertaining, but they're not like going anywhere, and they're not really changing. I feel like, and then I guess I would say, yeah, it's not only DC. I've actually said similar things about Captain America in Marvel Comics. Um, I uh, I like Captain America on screen with Chris Evans better than I like Captain America on paper. I feel like the version on paper has been a little flat for me for a while, and so I mean, and again, and he's the iconic, larger than life one you have in Marvel. So yeah, it this is this thing, a trend I'm noticing. It happens. I mean, I'm sure these are not the only examples, but that's happening in DC, and I mean, probably both Marvel and DC, but I'm noticing it more in DC with some of their big name characters like Batman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, those kinds of people. I'm like, I like these characters, but where's the story going? How is it going to change them? I can't really tell even after 100 issues. So I would just say, I guess my writing advice, and that's my observation. You can feel free to disagree. I mean, comic fans have different opinions on lots of different things. Feel free to disagree and start telling me in the comments, and we'll talk about it. But I guess my exhortation to you as writers would be, keep your characters fresh and interesting. I mean, most of us probably haven't had. So the interesting that causes this problem is iconic characters who have gone on for a long, long time, like decades of time and hundreds of issues. Most of us aren't dealing with that, but I don't know if you have a long series, like Wheel of Time or something. Um, Make sure your character is growing and changing along with it. Make sure make sure that it's not getting stale for the reader, and that it's still fresh and exciting, and things are happening to your character, and it's not just more the same, kind of being repetitive, because most people don't want that these days. I mean, there's a place for it. We all enjoy sitcoms that are the same basic plot. We all enjoy, even the CW superhero shows that I've enjoyed. They've been called cyclical and like superhero soap operas, and there is some truth to that kind of thing. But in general, it seems like today's audiences want more. They want characters they can connect to and characters they can grow with. I think those are the ones. I think there's a place for like the popcorn fun stories, but I think we most connect to the characters we can identify with and grow along with over the course of time. So that's my encouragement to you. Watch out for your characters becoming stale. Keep them fresh by changing them and by giving them human emotions, opportunities to change, and doing different things with them. And go read some comics because they're fun. And also have a great weekend. Keep writing, doing what you're keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.